Good morning. I'm out doing a Dash food delivery. Hang on a second. Using my steering wheel here. I just wanted to take a moment to, and I may get a Dash coming in. I figure they're not coming in. Let me try to do something else. And then as soon as I start on something else, it'll come in. But we'll just see what happens. For some reason, I wanted to talk about shootings in the U.S. Not a pleasant topic, but just reflecting on the life I've lived and how these things have unfolded. You know, in light, I guess, of there was a shooting at the White House Correspondents' dinner last night. But when I was young, when I was really young, like elementary school age and younger, this was not something on the radar. We didn't think about this. This wasn't something that was part of my consciousness. And a part of that is you're in kind of if you're fortunate, you can kind of be in a little bit of a protected space. Hopefully you are as a child, where you're the brutalities, some of the harsh realities, some of the vicious realities of this world have not really infiltrated your consciousness. I don't want to say that so starkly, but I think the reason I'm bringing that up is to say that I don't think that was what was going on. It wasn't just like I was being protected by people around me, you know, educators, people in my immediate circle, family, etc. I don't think it was that they were keeping that information out of my consciousness. I just think it wasn't really as big of a conversation. You know, gun violence is as old as guns. Violence is as old as humanity. But this kind of modern phenomenon of mass shootings and is that wasn't happening. Now, all of that changed very dramatically, and this was sort of a coming of age moment, I guess, in retrospect. I mean, it was a significant moment. It's kind of hard to tease apart history when you're living through it, but, or to, you know, accurately flag the significance of certain things, but it was a big thing when it happened, and this was in middle school for me, and this was Columbine, the shootings in Columbine High School in Colorado. I must have been in 7th or 8th grade. I think that was 1999 or 2000. 7th or 8th grade. And it was bad. It was like a national trauma, a shock to the soul, shock to the spirit. Hard to even really process. I mean, even to this day, it's as kind of commonplace, unfortunately, frequent as these events have happened, seem to happen, still is a daunting thing to even try to contemplate. But especially then, and I think nationally, I think it'd be safe to say, but also just the age that I was, you know, still developing, early adolescence. Just a horrific tragedy. Horror show. Again, hard to even comprehend, hard to contemplate it, but that changed things a lot. It definitely did. I remember following on the heels of that, and immediately, basically, I mean, this is a long time ago, so I don't remember everything perfectly, but we started to have shooter drills, live shooter drills, lockdown drills at the middle school that I was at. I think this was true nationally in most places, but there was like a code name. They'd come on the intercom. I think it was Mr. Lockerbie has entered the building. If we heard that come on the intercom, that was the code that there was a drill or an active shooter. And we had to shelter in place. I can't remember exactly what that looked like. I think it was just locking our door, turning out the lights, getting away from the windows, maybe getting under our desks. I can't remember exactly. But man, that's an awful thing, right? It's understandable and it's a safety precaution that you do it, but just the fact of doing it is awful and is evidence of a very horrific reality, traumatic reality. It's like there's a national trauma that in a way is enacted. Maybe I'm kind of blowing that out of proportion, but you could say it's ripples of a national trauma having to do something like that. I remember too, there was like there were two guys. There was this kind of local gang. I can't remember the name. Black Militia or Metal. I can't remember the name. Black Razors, something like that. And it was a kid from my middle school, kind of a troubled guy, kind of a thug type of a character, and his friend, who I think was a year older, so he would have been high school aged. And they had guns, and I guess they had compiled, in the wake of Columbine, they had compiled this hit list. I never actually saw it. I never saw it. And I could be misremembering. I mean, there's so much hearsay. It's kind of, the details are a little bit fuzzy and not super important. I remember hearing that I was on it, and it was because I played sports at the time. And it was a weird badge of honor. It should not have been. That's weird thing that I felt sort of like I made the list or something. That's not a good thing. But when you're in mid school, there's a lot going on in your brain, and like I felt significant enough to be on it. I don't know. Anyways, that's a minor detail, but and a weird one. But yeah, and so there was this heightened paranoia. I think one of those guys, I think the guy in the mid school that was kind of one of the leaders of this gang, ended up shooting himself or dying from a gunshot years later. I can't remember all the details. I may have that wrong, but it was a big deal. I think they got arrested. And anyways, yeah, moving on into high school, I remember there was a bomb threat once. We had to evacuate. It just kicked off this whole era and then 9/11 hit. A loss of innocence. It's hard to, I mean, because so much of this is tied up in my own sort of developmental journey, and you can kind of you can get kind of myopic with how it felt subjectively to the, larger collective picture. But that was a pretty traumatic era. I think a lot changed in, 1999 to early 2000s with Columbine, with 9/11, etc. And it just kicked off this era where that became more and more part of the national conversation, more and more part of our national consciousness. And that's so sad. That's so sad. That's so sad. In a way, it's good that I feel I have a point of contrast of a prior era where this wasn't as big of a deal. I know there were school shootings and mass shootings before this, but not in the way that things are now, and not in the way they've been really since Columbine. That's my sense of it. Um, it's a trauma localized with the event, of course, especially with the people that experience it, let's say in Columbine. But it's a trauma nationally, all the televised images and all the ripple effects and knock on downstream effects of, extra security measures, but also just psychologically, there's something that happens there, the stripping away of a sense of safety and protection. And I think that's part of, we could say, what's so evil and demonic, what's so evil about these things is how they infiltrate one's consciousness. That they seem to, these movie theater shootings. There's another one was in Aurora, Colorado, a number of years later, at a movie theater. Church shootings, and it seems to strike all these just places where you kind of go to just relax. You want to feel safe in those, and you typically did prior to a lot of this, just feel safe going out to a movie, going to church, going to school, etc. But that's part of the terror of it, and the terrorizing of the country is that background sense of unease and the recognition of the possibility of something horrible, awful happening. It's a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. God, it's just so sad. It's such a shame. The pain of it is just. Not sure what else to say about it, really. I mean, one image I was having as I was thinking about all this, I worked at a grocery store not too long ago, and we have in the floral department, kind of close to where the department I was in, they often, for different events, different holidays, etc., I think just probably year round they have some of this, but they blow up different, themed balloons, balloons with different printed images or, Happy Easter or whatever. And they, and occasionally they overinflate the balloon and it pops, right? And one day it was just like happened multiple times, like in succession. And that's a loud, sudden bang, right? That noise. And now, I didn't have a strong reaction to it. I sort of just kind of turned in the direction of it to kind of, I was more alert, kind of looking to see, especially to see how people were reacting in that vicinity. We kind of socially reference in that way to kind of figure out, potential threats. And so, and maybe I just had heard it before and kind of had in my mind that those balloons sometimes pop in that area. I can't remember, but somebody next to me who was shopping, and definitely I had in my mind that I needed to look, and I needed to investigate what was going on. And somebody that was next to me, a shopper, customer, said, maybe I'm misremembering, but it seemed like they kind of grabbed their heart and said, my gosh, I thought that was a gun going off. And for sure, I mean, I think I had that in my consciousness as well, that was a possibility. But man, isn't that sad? Just that loss of, I don't know, that I think at a certain point in our civilizational arc and not too long ago, within living memory for me. I don't think that would have been the first thought that ran through somebody's mind, or even really a thought. And I can remember at different times in my life being more hypervigilant about where the exits were. Like when I would go to a public event or to a movie theater or something like that. Anyways, it's just sad. And we just pray for protection, for a resolution to the violence, that God's grace, that God's mercy touches every human heart, transforms every heart. That the pain in some measure would release, would abate, would resolve, would be healed. It's a tough place, this planet, in many ways. Anyways, not the best topic. I'm not even sure why I felt like talking about it, but maybe something useful, I don't know. And I didn't get any offers coming in. That surprises me. Anyways, hope you're doing well. Maybe I'll post this, I don't know. God bless, God protect us on this planet. God bless, take care. In Jesus' name, amen. Take care.